Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 217th meeting of the Audit Committee, Tuesday, September the 5th, 2023. Roll call by the chair.
All right, record will reflect the trustees Watson, Nicholasison, Wilson, and Fair, who is online, are all present.
Can I get approval of committee meeting minutes, August 1st, 2023?
So moved. Second.
There are no comments by the chair. The internal audit, presentation of the report, review administration of construction contracts. Good morning, Todd.
Good morning, everyone. So if you go on and grab this presentation, we usually have to go with a report. So this was a review of administration of construction contracts. If you open to slide 2, I'll give you a little overview of this area. As you guys are all aware, the expenditures and activities in the area of CRP are significant. The district has budgeted approximately $3.2 billion in project costs over the past 8 years. You can see the schedule and the list of the different budget amounts over the last 8 years. Excuse me. Now, if you notice, FY24 is a little larger at $566 million. That's generally a result of the fact that there's $187 million in there for the incinerator project. Now, if you back that out, that brings it back down to $380, which is more in line with the previous years. But again, the expenditures are significant in this area. So slide 3. So basically, what are the cost drivers of this district CRP? One of the main cost drivers, obviously, is the consent decree, but it's not the only one. The focus of the consent decree is elimination of sewer overflows and overall improvements to the system. At this point, it is $7.2 billion in 2023 dollars over 28 years. But there's also some other areas. There's ongoing recent regulatory requirements that have to be met, and there's also identified infrastructure deficiencies requiring intervention or improvement. Now, the incinerator project is a good example of something that would fall into both those second two categories to meet the requirements and to make improvements to the equipment. Any questions? So slide 4. So one of the points here, there's no real slowdown in costs and activities in this area that's going to occur in any time soon. This is something that's going to be going on for the next 10, 15 years. So it's really important to maintain effective procedures and controls around the administration of this whole area. So it is incumbent on internal audit to effectively audit this area. So this engagement is just simply one of several audits that touches this overall CIP area. You can see a list of different audits, which includes the administration of construction contract, which is this audit. We hit change orders. We audit construction management design contracts. Emergency contracts will be hitting this fall. Overhead rates we look at annually. Project accounting pay application processes, we'll be doing that again in 2024. Procurement procedures we hit in 2022, and diversity we'll be doing that again in 2024. So we are touching this overall area at least a couple of times a year, if not maybe more. Let's move to slide 5. So it's true the scope. It consisted of the population of open construction contracts as of November 2022. We selected 5 contracts to review. The dollar values in total for the 5 contracts was $57.2 million. We selected contracts that included lump sum and unit cost contracts. As you can see the table that it shows the different contracts. Now we're really trying to get kind of a cross section of different types of contracts, and I'll explain this a little bit. The first contract was the DC 202, DC 03 sanitary relief. That is a unit cost contract, and the management of it is spearheaded by a construction management firm that we hire for that. They do work with our people here, but they are generally the ones that are managing out there at site. They have a trailer out there, and they're overseeing the construction. It's almost a $45 million contract. So it's a large contract. It involves an installation of larger capacity trunk sewers, which will result in removal of 7 SSO. It reduces backups. It does run through Brentwood, Rock Hill, and Ladue. So part of the construction involves tunneling with a boring machine. And the other part is just excavation, where they're digging and they install the pipes. Now, the second contract we looked at was the Mississippi flood wall. That was a lump sum contract. Again, that one it has a CM on it. That one's about 9.5 million. This one's a little different in that it's more facility related. Involves equipment. Involves a replacement and refurbishment of the gates and gate equipment along the Mississippi flood wall. Now, the third one down was Tulane Wilbur Outfall Sanitary Relief. That was a unit cost contract. That one is internally managed. So we have our construction management team oversees that one, have inspectors go out and manage that contract. That's a $2.3 million contract. It involves the installation of 5,000 feet of larger diameter sewer, which increases capacity. And ultimately, they'll be able to remove one constructed SSO when it's finished. It's an open cut project. Again, they're excavating, they're digging, and they're installing pipe. And the next one is infrastructure repairs for stormwater. So this one's a little bit different than previously. Unit cost, it's internally managed, it's $776,000 contract amount. It involves stormwater infrastructure repairs. Now, the repairs where they're needed are identified by operations, so it's kind of across the district. It involves a lot of CIPP, which is cured in place piping, which where they're installing the lining and it basically extends the life of the pipe. And there's also point repairs involved with it. The last one is a smaller contract. It's a sanitary repair. It's lump sum, again, internally managed, $98,000 contract. It's a small open cut sanitary sewer repair contract. 2-point repairs are involved with that contract. So again, we try to get a good cross section of different kinds of contracts, big ones, small ones, different types of work. So any questions? Here's slide 6. This is some pictures related to that Deer Creek trunk sewer. That's the big contract. Look at the top left corner, you can see the map. So the contract we were looking at is the phase 3 and 4. That's the work they're doing up in Ladue, and I think that involves a lot of tunnel work. You can see the boring machine down in the bottom left-hand corner. The other two pictures are related to the open cut processes. All right, slide 7. So the overall objectives of engagement are to ensure the following. Basically, first of all, the fundamental bid competition and selection procedures were followed. The project contracts are properly approved and authorized. They're within approved budget and funding amounts. The payment application transactions are accurately and properly processed in compliance with terms of the contract, using appropriate rates, appropriate pricing. It's for work and costs that are actually performed. In other words, we don't pay anybody up front. The only time we do that is for mobilization. We do give mobilization money for some contracts. Make sure appropriate retainers are withheld. Make sure for not costs already paid by the contract, paid by the district. Make sure we're not getting double billed, so forth. Make sure it's supported by adequate documentation and approvals. Slide 8. We want to make sure that change order transactions represent a legitimate change in scope that are adequately explained and documented with proper approvals. They're priced appropriately, they're calculated accurately. We want to make sure the contractors are complying with the prevailing wage requirements and the contractors are adequately insured. Regarding diversity goals and activities, we make sure those efforts to meet the goals are adequately monitored by the district's diversity division, and the progress to meet those goals are adequately tracked by the documented by diversity. Also, want to make sure the reporting and documentation requirements are complied with by the contractors. They have certain documentation requirements they have to meet. Slide 9. Approach and methodology. How did we go about this audit? What did we do? First, we have a lot of discussions with the construction team in the very beginning, throughout, and then towards the end. We had a lot of meetings going over all these contracts. There's a lot of moving parts to some of these contracts, especially that large one. We obtained a read documentation related to the overall process for the 5 different contracts, which included bid summary documentation, obviously documentation around the contracts, funding documentation, we had insurance documentation, got the payroll reports, prevailing wage schedules, documentation around change order transactions. Same thing with the pay application, we got the documentation for all that. Looked at the ordinances and looked at the diversity documentation. If you move to slide 10, So we did do some detailed testing of the pay applications and change orders transactions. Again, looking at it in great detail, looking at the math, looking at the reasonableness, the overall propriety, the accuracy of the supporting documentation, the compliance with the contract terms, the pricing, and so forth. We tested for compliance with prevailing wage requirements. We reviewed the diversity component for each contract. We tested for completion of the required documentation reports. As I mentioned, at the beginning of the process, when you did the bid process, there's certain documentation that has to be submitted. And then as they start the work, there's also a set of documents they have to complete. And then throughout the project, they have monthly report submissions they have to submit. I'll also read the utilization and progress reporting, discuss that progress diversity, making sure, hey, they had a good handle, and on how successful this project was being in regards to diversity. Now, towards the end of the field work, we did meet with the entire construction team. We had about a 2-hour meeting with them. We're all in one room and just basically going down all our questions on the different contracts and went through them one by one. It was a really good meeting, and they were very effective in answering our questions. So ultimately, we ended up with one recommendation that we'll talk about in the next page. All right, slide 11. Again, we had a satisfactory opinion. It did identify one opportunity for improvement. Now, again, I think, again, it's a very important area. I think, they do have some good checks and balances and processes in place. So the opportunity for improvement was around the review and approval and processing of pay applications. So go to slide 12. In testing the pay applications for project 13558, to refresh your memory, that is the project from our table at the very bottom one. It's a small one. It's the small open cut project with the 2-point repairs. It's about a $98,000 contract. On one specific pay application, there's a statement of value or line item for excavation and repair that was overpaid. It actually was doubled. Instead of a quantity of 1, a quantity of 2 was used on the pay estimate report. I think somebody just typed it in wrong. The district was overbilled. District overpaid by $10,000 on the application. However, through additional processes on the next pay application, the error was identified and corrected. So ultimately, the district did pay the correct amount and was not overbilled for the work. Slide 13. So we recognize that the error was ultimately identified and corrected. However, it is preferable that such an error would be prevented from processing instead of being detected after the payment has occurred. So the 200% of estimated quantities for a line item like excavation should have been a red flag on that pay estimate report and should have been caught right there. So our recommendation is, management address this item at their next monthly staff meeting and also in the periodic training. They have meetings every month. They meet with the team and they have training. So I think somebody was probably just going too fast on this one. And I did speak with engineering about this. They've already had a meeting about it and talked about it and have addressed it in some training. So I think they're already on top of it. Does anybody have any questions? That it?
That it, Todd?
Yeah, I think so. If somebody has any questions, I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you, Todd.
Thanks.
Next meeting tentative date, October the 3rd, 2023. Can I get a motion for adjournment?
So moved. Second.
Meeting adjourned.
We'll get documents switched out, Trustee Nicholson.
Okay. Good morning. I'd like to call to order the 246th meeting of the Program Management Committee, Tuesday, September 5th, 2023. Can I get a roll call?
Yes, the record will reflect the trustees Watson, Nicholasison, and Wilson are present in the room. Trustees Fair and Wabi are present online.
Approval of committee minutes for August 1st, 2023.
So move.
Second. No comments by the chair. Engineering Department agenda items.
Good morning, trustees. Fairly hefty agenda today, so if you have a question, please stop me. All right, the first 6 items today will authorize the awarding of green infrastructure grants to 6 entities. All 6 projects will reduce combined sewer overflows to the Mississippi River per the long-term control plan and consent decree, and the funding for these projects is from the fiscal year 23 appropriations for CSO green infrastructure, which was adopted earlier this year. The first project is the green infrastructure grant for apiary at the park. This ordinance authorizes the district to enter an agreement with HGS LLC doing business as Res Environmental Operating Company. The project will reduce runoff with the installation of 3 bioretention basins, 2 rain barrels, and impermeable pavement. The total cost of the project is estimated at $635,482, and there's a request for reimbursement of that total amount, $635,482. In your packet shows the location of this project, which is north downtown in the area of 21st Street and Salisbury. You can see a number of the larger parcels there are the permeable pavements, in addition to the rain barrels that are capturing flow from the buildings. Next item is green infrastructure grant for Doorways Phase 2, Elliott Place. Enters an agreement with Interfaith Residences doing business as Doorways. Will reduce runoff with the installation of 2 bioretention basins and permeable pavement. Total cost of this project is $97,000, and DBA Doorways is requesting $84,600 reimbursement for the cost of green infrastructure. This project is just west of the NGA in North City on North Jefferson. You can see the installation of permeable pavements and 2 bioretention basins. Next item is for Peace Park. This ordinance authorizes the district to enter agreement with LRA, care of Green City Coalition. This project will reduce volume runoff with the installation of 1 bioretention basin. Excuse me. The total cost of this project is $1.2 million, and the Green City Coalition is requesting $415,500 reimbursement for the cost of green infrastructure. In your packet, this project is located in North St. Louis City, near the intersection of East Grand and 20th Street. As you can see, there's a significant basic bioretention basin, basically draining almost the extent of a full city block. So the runoff from that development will go through this bioretention basin. Next item is a green infrastructure grant for Project Terminus. This is an agreement with Procter & Gamble Manufacturing Company. Its project will reduce runoff with the installation of 1 bioretention basin. Total cost of the project is $346,356. Procter & Gamble is requesting approximately $346,356 reimbursement for the green infrastructure. This project is also in North St. Louis City, near the East Grand and Hall Street intersection, and it's just west of our Bissell wastewater treatment plant for redevelopment work that Procter & Gamble is doing in that area. Next item is green infrastructure grant for Ronald McDonald House. So it's authorized the district to enter agreement with Ronald McDonald House Charities. This project will reduce runoff with the installation of 2 bioretention basins. The total cost of the project is $232,336, and they're requesting the full amount, $232,336 reimbursement for the green infrastructure. This project is located just west of here, south and west of here near Shoto and Boyle in the Midtown area. Redevelopment of a Ronald McDonald House. And you can see the 2 large bioretention basins that'll capture the runoff from their new facility at that location. And finally, green infrastructure grant for the Urban League. This will authorize the district to enter an agreement with the Urban League of Metropolitan St. St. Louis Incorporated. This project will reduce runoff with the installation of rain garden and permeable pavement. The total cost of the project is estimated at $397,000, and the Urban League is requesting approximately $250,000 reimbursement for the cost of this green infrastructure. This is located in North St. Louis City, near East Grand and New Florissant Road in North St. Louis. You can see there's the large portions of their parking lot that they're going to put in permeable pavement and then add a rain garden to the southern end of the property. Are there any questions on the grants for this month? Okay, the next item is the Dearborn Drive Storm Sewer Project. This will appropriate additional funds to an ongoing construction contract being constructed by Gershenson Construction. This is an unplanned appropriation from the Deer Creek OMCI. The work being done on this project consists of construction of approximately 360 lineal feet of storm sewers, varying in size 15 to 24 inches in diameter. The purpose of the project was to alleviate yard flooding and erosion on Dearborn Drive in Warson Woods. This supplemental appropriation is necessary to reroute the storm sewer to the street. Once we were potholing for utilities, discovered that a water line that was identified as active had been abandoned and that a new water line was put in the direct path. So we redesigned the project, moved it to the street, which required additional cost for the pavement restoration on the project. The total appropriation for the project now will be $280,000. Any questions? The next item is the Lime wastewater treatment facility repairs and improvements to the grit tanks and secondary clarifier duct bank. This appropriates additional funds to an ongoing construction contract being constructed by Goodwin Brothers Construction. This is a planned appropriation and is budgeted in the fiscal year 24 budget. The work being done consists of replacement of grit collection equipment at 4 grit tanks, replacement of electrical duct bands and conduits to 12 secondary clarifier tanks, and increased coverage of radio and cellular communication networks throughout the Lime wastewater treatment facility. The purpose of this project is to replace equipment and appurtenances that have exceeded their useful life and to make improvements. This is a planned supplemental appropriation of $5,300,000 to facilitate the construction fiscal year 24, providing a total appropriation for the project of $9,300,000. All right, the next 6 items or so were new bids that were done this past month. The first project was the Bissell Combined Sewer and Junction Chamber repair. It actually appropriates funds and authorized staff to enter a construction contract. The work consists of the repair of existing combined sewer junction chamber and approximately 5 lineal feet of 54 by 66 inch brick combined sewer and appurtenances. The purpose of this project is to repair a failing junction chamber. The district received 2 bidders for this work. The low bid was from Bates Utility Company. The bid was below our design estimate, and our appropriation of $530,000, which includes contingencies and utility relocation, is below the original budget for the project. Bates has committed to 17% MBE African American participation on this project. Next item is the cross timber sanitary replacement. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter a construction contract. The work being done consists of construction of approximately 412 feet of 8-inch diameter sanitary sewers and 516 lineal feet of 2-inch diameter force main and 4 grinder pump systems and appurtenances. The purpose of this project is to replace a failing sanitary sewer. The district received 2 bids for this project. The low bid was from Keeley Construction Group. The bid was above our designer's estimate, and our appropriation of $875,000, which includes $145,000 for utility relocation, was above the original budget for the project. Keeley Construction Group is committed to 17.14% African American participation on the project, which meets the 17% goal for the project. Next item is the Valley Sanitary Relief Phase 3. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter into a construction contract. The work being done consists of construction of approximately 5,500 lineal feet of sanitary sewers from 8 to 15-inch diameter. The purpose of this project is to increase system capacity and alleviate building backups. The district received 7 bids for this project. The low bid was from Pace Construction Company, LLC. The bid was above our designer's estimate, and our appropriation of $5,150,000, which includes utility relocation of $600,000, is above the original budget for the project. Pace Construction is committed to 20.02% MBE African American participation, which exceeds our 17% goal for the project. Next item is the Wilton Lane Pump Station Replacement Storage Project. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter a construction contract. The work to be done consists of construction of approximately 536 lineal feet of pipe sewers varying in size from 4-inch to 12-inch in diameter, replacing of the pump station, storage, and appurtenances. The purpose of this project is to replace a deteriorated and outdated pumping station. The district received 2 bids for this work. The low bid was from Kelp Contracting. The bid was above our designer's estimate. Our appropriation of $1.2 million is below the original budget for the project. Kelp is committed to just over 17% African American participation, which exceeds the 17% goal for the project. Next item is a Fairway Court bank stabilization. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter into a construction contract. The work to be done consists of construction of approximately 380 lineal feet of natural channel stabilization, 245 feet of modular block retaining wall, and appurtenances. The purpose of this project is to alleviate bank erosion along Coldwater Creek and Fairway Court. The district received 3 bids on this project. The low bid was from Waymar Farms Incorporated. The bid was slightly above the design estimate, and our appropriation of $480,000 is below the fiscal year budget for the project. Waymar Farms is committed to 17.27% African American participation, which exceeds the 17% goal. The next item is the Litzinger Storm Improvement Project. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter a construction contract. The work to be done consists of construction of approximately 228 lineal feet of pipe sewers from 12 to 18-inch in diameter appurtenances. The purpose of this project is to alleviate yard flooding on Litzinger Road in the city of Frontenac, Missouri. The district received 5 bids on this project. The low bid was from Asker Construction, LLC. The low bid was below the design estimate, and the appropriation of $75,000 is below the budget for the project. Since Asker's bid was below the $50,000 threshold, There was not a goal for MBE participation on this particular project. The next two items are contract, they're projects that the district had awarded and were under construction, and the contractor abandoned these two projects, so the district had to go to the bonding agency to finish these two projects. So I'll explain the details, but we've now hired a new contractor to complete this work. We're bringing that contract to the board, those two contracts to the board for approval. The first one is Canterbury and Rowland Sanitary Relief. This authorizes staff to enter into a construction contract. The work on this contract consists of the completing the remaining work from original construction contract. The contract consists of the construction of approximately 1,600 feet of sanitary sewers, 8 to 15 inch in diameter, approximately 680 feet of natural channel stabilization appurtenance. The purpose of this project is to alleviate building backups and overcharged sanitary sewers and alleviate structure flooding at 6900 block of Rowland Boulevard in the city of Northwoods and Pasadena Hills. The contractor on the original construction contract abandoned the project in December of 2022. The district has made a claim against the contractor's bid bond, and their surety has competitively bid the remaining work. Fred M. Luth was a successful low bidder. The district and the surety have entered into agreement whereby the surety shall provide funds to the district for the completion of the project. This board approval is required for the district to enter into construction contract with Fred M. Luth to complete the remaining construction. The surety company received 3 bids, and the low bid was from Fred M. Luth and Son. We did include in your packet kind of some pictures of where the work was left, and obviously our goal is to get out there and get this work complete. As you know, it's been over a year, so our residents have had to deal with this over that period of time. We've had to maintain everything in place while this has been going on. So we'll be happy. We will be asking at next Thursday's meeting to intro and adopt so we can get working on this right away. The other project was the Chutes Road Sanitary Relief. This authorized staff to enter a construction contract. The work consisted of the construction of approximately 1,000 lineal feet of sanitary sewers, 8 to 15 inch in diameter. The purpose of this project is to reduce building backups and relieve overcharged sanitary sewers. The contractor abandoned the project in December of 22. The district made the claim against the contractor's bid bond, and surety has competitively bid the remaining work. Fred M. Luth was a successful low bidder. The district and surety have entered into agreement whereby the surety will provide funding to complete the project. And on this project as well, the surety received 3 bids. The low bid was from Fred M. Luth and Sons. Again, we provided some additional drawings of that work, and there has been some things we've had to do to shore up those sites, and we're being reimbursed by the surety for that work. Are there any questions on those 2 items? Again, we'll be requesting introduction and adoption next Thursday on those 2 items. Next item is the infrastructure repairs facilities. This is the annual appropriation of fiscal year funds for infrastructure repairs to be bid through our purchasing division. The work to be done consists of construction of needed repair, replacement, improvement projects to address needs at our facilities throughout the district, such as treatment plants, pump stations, and other district infrastructure. This appropriation of $3 million is to continue the implementation of the repair program for district facilities. As projects are identified, contracts are hired through the rules of our purchasing ordinance. And just kind of an update of work to be done. I don't see my notes here. These are projects such as piping projects at our plant, electrical modifications, not large full-scale projects that we would typically put in the capital program. but smaller projects that come up throughout the year that our own crews aren't able to do. Any questions? The next item is a resolution, general services for easement acquisition service. This resolution will authorize staff to enter the first option year of 2 additional 1-year renewal terms for a contract previously awarded to O.R. Cole & Associates for easement acquisition services. This authorizes O.R. Cole to provide easement acquisition services to allow the district to attain property rights as required by the consent decree. This contract has 1 additional year based on good performance. We have an internal staff that acquires easements for the district, but we also have this contract with O.R. Cole for when we are at peak times with acquiring easements. And over the past year, we were down at one time 3 easement right-of-way agents. We've since hired 2. Again, we only use this when we need those outside services. All right, the next 4 items are ordinance requesting authorization to proceed to condemnation to acquire easement rights to complete our easement acquisition so the projects can move forward in order to comply with the schedule and the consent decree. I do want to kind of just give some background. We bring these projects to you and request authorization to go to condemnation. Kind of wanted to give you a little bit of history. We looked at the numbers for the last 5 years. We've acquired just under 1,200 easements the last 5 years. We've brought to the board requesting a total of 194. And again, we continue to negotiate with folks. We ended up with only 22 of those projects actually going to the condemnation process. But we do get your authorization in order to keep the moving process. We have people that just don't respond. We have people that hire lawyers that takes more time. And we're trying to keep the project on schedule. So we come to you to try to do that. But I thought that was a good number for you guys to know that even like today, I'm bringing, I think, a total of about 16 total properties, so we're looking at probably only 2 or 3 of those may even end up in court. All right, the first item is Conway Road sanitary relief. This ordinance authorizes district to proceed with further condemnation efforts, including the filing of all necessary court pleadings and documents leading to the acquisition of the permanent or temporary construction easements on 2 parcels of ground in the city of Ladue. The easements and temporary construction easements are needed to construct the project, which consists of the construction of approximately 761 feet of 8 to 15-inch sanitary sewers and appurtenances. The purpose of this project is to alleviate basement backups and surcharging of the sanitary sewer system. This project required 10 easements to be acquired. We've acquired 8 of those so far, leaving 2 for condemnation. MSD will continue to finalize negotiation with these 2 current property owners, but if agreements can't be met, we want to proceed to condemnation. The 2 parcels, the map is shown there where those are located. Parcel 1 to your left, we have met several times on site. We've made several counter offers. This last time they're staying firm, and so are we, so we're going to move to condemnation on this particular parcel. Parcel 4, which is more in the center of your page, basically we're going back and forth. We're still in discussions here. They asked for some minor modifications to our easement language. We're able to do that, and they're asking for the appraisal information for them to review. We do not expect that one to go to condemnation. All right, the next project is the North Clay Sanitary Relocation Project. This action authorized the staff to proceed with further condemnation efforts, including the filing of all necessary court pleadings and documents for the acquisition of a permanent easement and temporary construction easement on one parcel of ground in the city of Kirkwood. The easement temporary construction is needed to construct the project, which consists of 448 lineal feet of 8-inch sanitary sewers. The purpose of this project is to relocate and increase capacity for an existing 6-inch sewer line that serves several homes and is located under several of the homes. So we're trying to abandon that and relocate that project. This project required 7 easements. We've gotten 6 of those thus far, leaving 1 to proceed to condemnation. The parcel shown up there is parcel 15. As you can see, we're really tight quarters between the 2 homes. So we're taking quite a bit of easement. So there's been a lot of discussions, particularly these homes we're requiring easements have to have new laterals installed. So that's where the majority of the discussion has been. We do not anticipate going to condemnation, but we'd like to get that project moving and get that 6-inch sewer line replaced with a new line. The next item is the Spady Road Sanitary Sewer Improvement Project. Again, authorize staff to proceed with further condemnation, including filing of pleadings of documents leading to the acquisition of permanent and temporary construction on 2 parcels of ground in the cities of Frontenac and Creve Coeur. Easements are needed to construct a project which consists of approximately 845 lineal feet of pipe sewers from 8 to 15-inch in diameter. And this project is to alleviate building backups. We've been unable to negotiate these easements. This project required 5 easements overall. 3 have been acquired, leaving 2 for condemnation. And we'll continue to discuss with the property owners, but we're asking to go to condemnation. On this particular project, parcel 4, which is to the left or to the right of the entrance to the subdivision. The big hang up with both of these 2 parcels that are on both sides is they don't want to sign the easement until you can't see it on this aerial photo, but there's a monument that comes into the subdivision on both sides of the road, and there's a ornamental retaining wall. They both want us to reach an agreement with the homeowners association before they'll sign. So we've been in discussions with the homeowners association. Obviously, we replace anything we disturb. So the plan is to get that worked out again, but we want to keep the project moving forward. So this will allow us to keep those conversations going with those 2 property owners. This last project that I'm going to talk about is a pretty significant project. It's almost 2 miles of sewers located in the cities of Huntley and Ladue. It is a 2-mile creek outfall sanitary relief project. We're requesting authorization to proceed with further condemnation efforts and the filing of all necessary court documents on 13 parcels of ground in the cities of Huntley and Ladue. The easements are needed to construct approximately 11,100 feet of 8 to 48-inch diameter sewers. The purpose of this project is to alleviate building backups and surcharging of the sanitary sewer. At this time, we've been unable to reach an agreement with 13 of those parcels. There were a total of 27 easements for the project. We've acquired 14 of these. And that leaves 13. We continue to work with these property owners, but feel like our best course of action here is to proceed to condemnation. Before I go over them individually, there are 6 of these parcels that have already retained attorneys, the same attorney. So the attorney was able to get with 6 of those, basically. So our attorneys and their attorneys are trading notes on this particular project, so I'll go over them. Additionally, the plats are right in front of you. The first parcel is a large parcel. We've been negotiating with the property owner, met several times out there. We do not expect to go to condemnation on this one. As you can see, it's along the perimeter of the project near the creek. One of the things that's difficult about this project, the existing sewer is kind of in and aligned in the creek, which is part of our problem with the large source of inflow. We're trying to get the project out of the creek, which puts us up into these folks' yards, into wooded areas for the project. The next one is parcel 10. As we move this out of the street, this is a number of the parcels on this particular plat here. Again, you can see us, we're moving it out of the creek to the west side of the creek. One of the things, this is being such a large project, we're anticipating being on these people's property or some disruption anywhere from 2 to 3 years. So you're negotiating easement rights and temporary rights for these properties for 2 to 3 years. So obviously there's a lot of questions. This grouping here is the part of the 6 that have retained an attorney for our negotiations. That's parcels 10, 11, I'm sorry, 10, 12, 13, and 14, the one shown right there. Parcel 15, again, we're trading offers. They have not acquired an attorney, but we do anticipate we will be going to condemnation on that. Parcel 19, we're working with the attorney to come up with some agreeable. Right now, all they're asking for is some minor modifications to the easement script. We feel like we're going to be able to accommodate that. Parcel 19, we do not expect to go to condemnation. Parcel 26, which is individual property owner, we've met them and their attorney on site. We've agreed in principle to a settlement, and we do not anticipate going to condemnation on that particular project. Parcel 27 does not have, again, we're not requiring a lot of easements on parcel 27, so we do not anticipate going to condemnation on that. Parcel 29, which is to the right on your screen, we've been talking with the property owners. They do have an attorney. We've traded offers on the easement. We do not anticipate going to condemnation. As you can see, that we're in the people's yard again for a longer period of time, but we are going to disrupt these parcels. So, parcel 32. Might need to shrink that one down. This is the old Warson Country Club. So there's a large easement across this parcel to put in the sewer, in addition to accessing the private roads utilized by the country club and the subdivision. We're going to impact at least 4 golf holes. The district, believe it or not, has had fairly good success working with golf courses. Generally, we're able to work out an agreement where we're through, and then we reimburse them. They allows them to do some of their own restoration to their satisfaction. We do not anticipate going to condemnation, but those negotiations continue right now. And then the kind of along that same line is parcel 39. This is our agreement for temporary access from the Somerset Downs Homeowners Association. In other words, it's the same access that the golf course uses. So we're going to need temporary or easement access rights from the Subdivision Homeowners Association. We're talking with them. We do believe we will probably end up in condemnation on that particular one to come up with an amount agreeable to both parties. Are there any questions? Obviously, a very difficult project for this, but it's a very well needed project to replace that trunk sewer and get it out of the creek and eliminate those building backups. Any questions? All right. The last agenda item for next Thursday is a resolution for force main evaluation program support. This authorized staff to amend a professional service agreement for condition assessment of force main asset inventory and exercise option year 4 of an existing agreement. This resolution authorizes the district to enter into an amendment with Pure Technologies to perform consent decree required analysis of existing force main inventory in order to recommend testing processes and technologies for use by the district. Proposed agreement will be for one more year. There's still one option year left to match the consent decree requirements for this testing requirement. The purpose of the agreement is to meet the key provision of the consent decree to conduct periodic non-destructive evaluation of existing force main assets. Been a very good program for the district, identifying needs of our force mains, where we need rehabilitation, and identify those force mains that need to be repaired or replaced throughout the district. Any questions? Okay, that concludes all the agenda items for next Thursday. But I do have one other item in other business. Can I proceed?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Nicholson. As promised by Mr. Holscher, staff has prepared a high-level summary of our major projects within our capital improvement program. These projects will span over the next 16 to 20 years of the program. The significance is there are a total of 4 major projects that will encompass almost 60 to 70% of all the program dollars during this period. The goal of this information is to keep you, the board, appraised of the progress of the projects as I bring different components of those projects to the committee meetings and to the board for appropriations and authorizations. These documents that I'm showing you here today on the 4 projects will update continuously every time I bring a component to the board. And then I plan to review all 4 of these projects as part of the annual budget process in April and May, where we do a presentation. I'll be able to update you as to the activities on these 4 major events. In your packets today, there are 4 sheets that are identifying these projects. The 4 projects are the wastewater treatment plant nutrient removal project, the SSO sanitary storage project, which is at various locations, the lower middle river to Pear tunnel project, and the upper river to Pear tunnel project. All the projects have had some preliminary planning or design work completed. 3 of the projects are required by the consent decree. The remaining project is required by regulation as part of our operating permits at our wastewater treatment plants. I will not review all 4 today, but we'll review the project with the near-term funding. That is the wastewater treatment plant nutrient removal project. If you want to go to that sheet's shown on the screen. This is MSD's nutrient removal project is designed to remove nutrients, nitrogen, and phosphorus from the treated wastewater. Removal is required by the EPA in order to reduce the size of Gulf hypoxia zone and will also improve the water quality of area rivers. The first portion of this project is in fiscal years 25 through 28 timeframe, and we're included in the dollars for the rate commission recent rate proposal. This will be phosphorus removal, which will occur at our Bissell Point, Lima, and Grand Glaze wastewater treatment plants using chemicals called coagulants. The construction cost for those three facilities is estimated at $50 million, and that's in fiscal year '24. There will be annual operating costs with the chemicals being used of about $8 to $9 million for that work. The second portion of the project is actually later in that time period I spoke of earlier. It's going to be constructed in the fiscal year 37 through 44 timeframe. And this will remove nitrogen and will require major treatment plant infrastructure at all of our wastewater treatment plants. So it's much more significant. The current estimates are close to $600 million. Those projects purposely are outside the consent decree. We haven't been mandated in our permits, but we do know that those requirements are coming. So we're keeping that in the program and planning on those costs during that time period. You turn the sheet over. One of the other two things we've added to this sheet to keep you updated, we want to keep you updated on the district's public communication for the projects. In other words, we have various public communication on all of our projects, whether it's actually public meetings, meetings with the regulators, meetings with the local cities, being the city of St. Louis or the county for building permits, things as that. So what we'll do is on this sheet, we'll update you on any public communications we're having on the projects. This project being a plant project, the majority of our communication will be regulatory and with the agencies that have jurisdiction, building permit jurisdiction in those areas. Also on this sheet to the right, you'll see I talked about the components that I'll be bringing you for approval. That just kind of lists kind of the time frame and the project number that I'll be bringing you. Obviously, for this particular project, we have the construction. This project is actually currently under design. We'll have construction management services to oversee that work. And then obviously multiple projects. If you look at fiscal year 39, those haven't been broken out, but obviously we'll be bringing design contracts to you and construction. Is now joining. So that's kind of the information. And obviously each one of these sheets has the maps associated with it. So that was a plan. Is just I wanted to go over one of these today, but the four major projects, we've provided you with one of these sheets. It'll serve to keep the board well informed of any major changes. Again, significant dollars for the remaining, the two of the tunnel projects that I spoke of are both in the $1 billion range. So we're talking about significant dollars there. So if you have any questions, once you get a look at these, you can get back with Brian or feel free to get a hold of me, myself, if you have a specific question about one of these projects. But that really just concludes my presentation on this side.
Thank you, Rich. Next tentative meeting date is October 3rd, 2023. Can I get adjournment?
So moved. Second. Okay.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to the 294th meeting of the Finance Committee, Metropolitan St. Louis, Florida. Can I get a roll call, please?
Yes, the record will reflect that trustees Wilson, Nicholasison, and Watson are in the room, and trustees Fair and Wabi are present online.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the committee meeting minutes of August the 1st?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Chair has no comments. We'll move forward into our normal update.
All right. The first item we have today is the pension quarterly performance update, and we've got Mike Comstock from Aon on the line. Good morning, Mike.
Morning, Tim.
It's all yours.
All right, well, let's take it away. Well, good morning. Hope everyone had a nice long holiday weekend. If there's any questions as I'm going through, please don't hesitate to speak up and let me know what you're thinking. But I'm going to start on page 4 of our deck. And like we do every quarter, I just want to give you a pulse of market activity and what the markets are providing to give you a better sense of why your plans performed the way that they did. So we'll start there, and then we'll get into the pension performance, and then we'll look at the DC plans. So again, page 4 gives a pretty good overview of what some major capital markets were providing here. We're looking at data toward the left-hand side through June, and then at the time of production of these materials, that was as of 8/18. I'll give you a verbal to give you a sense of what's happening since. But you can see on the left-hand side here, 2003, which, we're looking at the second quarter performance report here. Markets continue to be favorable, and we've seen this trend continue from the fourth quarter of last year, really after a disastrous 2022 for most capital markets. The fourth quarter stabilized and turned positive, and that's continued through the first quarter and now through the second quarter of 2023. So global stocks, top line, that's stocks everywhere, U.S., non-U.S., emerging, developed, was up close to 6% in the quarter, and bringing that one-year number to 16%. U.S. large cap, which is the Russell 1000. You can think of that as the S&P 500 as well. Just very large U.S. companies did even better, 8.6%. And what we're going to show you here in a second is that the market has been of late driven by a few names, privy to the tech sector. So we'll show you a chart of the bifurcation of how subsets of the market has performed. But keep that in mind. It's really been large cap U.S. tech that's been the strongest performer in 2023. So here you can see U.S. small cap stocks, and then we get into non-U.S. markets, which didn't fare as well as the U.S. The EFA index, which is developed markets, was up 3% in the quarter, and then emerging markets a bit less, roughly 1%. Bonds continue to be under some pressure. The starting yields are certainly greater. We all know that interest rates have moved up significantly. So the current yield of bond portfolios is a lot better than it was, a year and a half ago when interest rates were basically zero across the board. But rates have continued to move up. And again, there's an inverse relationship. If interest rates move up, the current bond value falls because yields in the market are greater. So that's what we're seeing. That's why there's negative numbers across that bond index. That 3-year number, -4, that's really representative of what we saw in 2022 when rates came off zero anchor and rose significantly as the Fed continued with their rate hike campaign. They've raised interest rates now to 5.25 on the short end. So very significant movement upwards in interest rates in roughly a year and a half. And again, bond portfolios are reflecting that. High yield bonds, some pretty good yield there, 9% over the last 1-year period. And then core real estate, again, valuations being reset due to higher interest rates. You can see core private real estate fell 10% over the last 1-year period through 6/30. As we sit here today, so September 6th of 2023, year to date, the S&P 500, so large cap, big stocks in the U.S. are up 18%. We've had actually a little bit of a rally over the last week, which is good and improving on those 8/18 numbers you see to the right of page 4. Non-U.S. markets are up 8%, and then investment grade bonds are flat so far in 2023. The next page, page 5, looks at equities and bonds going back to 2022. This is, sometimes the graph is a little bit easier to understand what's going on, but on the left-hand side, you can see equity markets. And we're looking at a few different proxies, the ones we talked about: global equities, emerging market, developed, and S&P. And you can see, generally it's all mixed, but the trend was the same. From the beginning of 2022, we saw more or less a downward slope that stabilized in October of 2022. And since then, we've seen some relief, and equity markets have rallied quite a bit. Not quite to where they were at the beginning of 2022, but we've gotten pretty darn close to those levels. And again, one of the reasons why equities sold off is the chart on the right, because interest rates moved up so much. The Fed had an intention of trying to slow inflation. A way to do that is to slow the economy, to slow the consumer, and higher interest rates prevent us generally from making purchases, and it does tend to start to slow the economy. I think we're still waiting to feel the full effects of that. The consumer has been resilient for sure, and therefore the economy has been pretty darn resilient as well. So we haven't had the sort of pain that a lot of folks were fearing when the Fed kicked off their interest rate hikes. The good news is that we are seeing inflation fall. We have seen inflation fall. How much further it's going to fall from here is really anybody's guess. I mean, the Fed's teed up to raise interest rates probably one more time. They may not. It really depends on data coming in here, throughout the next several weeks. But headline CPI, core PCE, that's the Fed's preferred measure of inflation, have both come down. So moving interest rates higher has worked to a pretty large degree in curtailing inflation. The next page, we're looking at page 6. What has driven the recent rally in the U.S. equity market? I find this chart pretty remarkable. So we're looking at a few different indices here. So on the bottom of this page, the kind of the darker blue line, that's the S&P 500 with tech as a sector removed. The next line up, that aqua, is the S&P 500 as a whole. The purple is NASDAQ 100, which are large tech companies here in the U.S. And then the 7 in gold. And you can see the names of those in the footnote there. It's a weighted average of Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon, NVIDIA, Tesla, and Meta. And look at the difference in those 7 stocks relative to the rest of the U.S. equity market. It's pretty significant. These companies have grown so large that their movement can sort of mask, in a way, the broader equity market, right? The equity market's up 18%. I just said that for the year. But if you strip out those 7 names, we're low single-digit return. So it hasn't really been a broad-based rally. It's been privy to a select few very large tech companies. Some folks think that that's worrisome, that a lot of other companies aren't rallying. That's a fair point. Again, you all generally have broad exposure, so you are capitalizing from the movements in these equities and benefiting from the S&P as a whole. But again, it is pretty interesting to see how the market's been driven. We've been here before. This has happened before when you have very large market caps within select companies and they move significantly. They can move the market, and these 7 companies certainly have. The next page, what's driving market conditions? Again, it's been inflation. It's been inflation for the last year and a half, trying to get inflation under control. The Federal Reserve, on the left-hand side, you can see, is playing a key role in trying to bring that down. They've been somewhat successful to date, haven't reached their goal. But again, the economy, what's going to happen to the consumer? Are we going to continue to grow? These 3 factors are really the key focal points of what's driving markets as a whole. Page 8 looks at key issues in the market today. And again, the big question is interest rate peaks. When is the Fed going to sort of get off the interest rate hike campaign that they're on right now? They may be done. Probabilities are that they're probably not, that they might have another rate hike, maybe 2 to go. But again, they're going to be data dependent. Recession or soft landing, I feel like we've been talking about a recession coming for the last year. It hasn't come yet. But again, when you raise interest rates to slow an economy, you're slowing an economy, which is slowing growth. And if the consumer starts to lose their footing, if we get some weakness in the job market or continued weakness in the job market, we could fall into a recession. Again, that's just one of those things that we're not sure how that's going to shake out, but that is on the probability spectrum. And then market expectations. It's amazing how well markets have held up given all this uncertainty. Interest rates are significantly higher, but yet markets are near all-time highs. It'll be interesting to see how markets perform, going forward. Our view is be cautious. Risk assets may not have a lot more room to run. So being broadly diversified and not sort of expecting what we've experienced so far in 2023 is I think, pretty good advice to adhere to. And then core views on page 9. Again, the markets are still hoping that rate cuts happen relatively soon. Those expectations have been adjusted. But again, we don't think that investors should be expecting rate cuts anytime soon, just given the still relatively high level of inflation and what the Fed's been telegraphing to us this whole time. Recessionary trends, again, we haven't fallen into one yet. Our view is that if anything, it's delayed rather than avoided. And again, as said on the bottom, risky assets should continue to face headwinds in an ongoing volatile market environment. Any questions on that? I'm going to go to page 11 and start with your pension plan performance, but I think there was a lot that I just put out there. I'm curious if anyone has any comments or questions.
I don't see any hands raised, so please continue.
All right, I will. Okay, so on page 11, you can see your plan performance. I think the news here is pretty darn good. Second quarter, 3%. You can see the policy benchmark, so you were able to outperform the benchmark. But again, the more important number there is that absolute 3%. Year to date, so the first 6 months of the year, up 7.5%. And then over that 1 year period, which still includes some difficulties of 2022, right? The market didn't really turn until the fourth quarter. 8.5% over the last 1 year. And again, that number is outpacing the policy benchmark by a pretty wide margin here. And again, this is all net of fees. Page 12 just looks at the rise of the pension plan's market value over time. We're going back a couple of decades here to 2000, and you can see generally upward slope, which is good. Markets have rewarded your asset allocation, which is on page 13. Your asset allocation relative to targets. The outlier here is real estate. We're in sort of a slow drip. You've been in this pretty high quality core real estate fund for a long time. You've been trying to get your money out of this fund for a long time too. This fund is protecting investors by not just selling assets, but using thoughtful dispositions and sales to pay off investors in the queue. You are one of them. We have a lot of clients actually in this particular real estate fund, all doing the same thing, just waiting somewhat impatiently, I suppose, for monies to come out. But that's why your asset allocation relative to targets is a little bit different. One of the things that we've been talking with Tim about is kicking off another asset liability study. I think that's something you'll probably do one way or another in the next year, where we can re-examine your policy allocations relative to your current circumstances with liability growth and funded status, and ultimately put forth a new asset allocation that's going to reflect what the goals are going forward. Page 14 looks at the performance, but here we're digging a little bit deeper, and we're looking at your underlying asset classes and the managers that are filling those buckets. And again, top line in that aqua is the pension plan performance, and you can see underneath. So year to date, as an example, large cap equity, you have an index fund here that's designed to return the market, which it has. 16.7% year to date return for that. Very, very strong absolute performance. Not something that was predicted going back to January 1st of this year that the U.S. market would give 16.5% for the first 6 months. Your small cap managers in aggregate have outperformed. That's thanks to one in particular. You can see Kennedy there. Big outperformance relative to its benchmark, almost 14% return. And the Times Square fund still on a pretty fantastic 10% return, but underperformed its benchmark. Net, you have an 11.7% return out of your small cap portfolio. When you factor that against the small cap market index, which is the Russell 2000, some pretty good outperformance net of fees. And similar story in the non-U.S., except for both managers here outperformed their benchmarks. The developed Morgan Stanley portfolio is up 14.5% year to date, and the emerging markets Morgan Stanley portfolio is up 6.5% year to date. Both outperforming their benchmark net of fees. So pretty good story on the equity front for sure across the board. Fixed income, I would say, a pretty darn good story in a more difficult asset class. The Bloomberg Barclays U.S. Intermediate Government Credit Index. That's a mouthful, but that's just a way to say treasuries and high quality credit for corporate bonds. Year to date was up 1.5. Your fixed income managers in aggregate gave you net of fees 2.6. So, outperforming by over a percentage point, net of fees. Again, really difficult, volatile market for fixed income, given rate movements. We saw rates shoot up significantly in 2022, start to come down a little bit, and then as of late, rates have moved back up. So these managers are navigating a fairly difficult fixed income market. And, so far they've been doing a pretty good job with relative performance. And then that real estate manager, that's the UBS Trumbull Fund. You can see still over $20 million in wind down mode, but still makes up 7% of the portfolio. Any questions on anything pension related?
No questions in the room.
All right, that's the long Labor Day weekend. I think that's encouraging the lack of questions. Page 16, looking at your DC plans. So bottom right, that $117 million, that's your combined assets for both your defined contribution and deferred contribution. So $117 million is what we're talking about here as an asset level. And on page 17, you can start to see how participants have these monies allocated. A good chunk of those are in the target date funds. We categorize that as tier 1. So again, really good investment options for folks that know that they just want to save, and that might be all they're interested in, right? They don't care about forming their asset allocation. They just want to put money away and have a thoughtful asset allocation. That's target date funds are designed just for that. And they get more conservative over time. So participants have an asset allocation that has less equity over time and more safer fixed income assets as they approach retirement age. That's how target date funds are designed. And these funds are performing exactly in line with expectations. They're index funds, so they're supposed to give you market performance. And here across the board, you can see that these funds are designed to do just that, or have delivered to do exactly what they're designed to do. Year to date, no surprise in seeing the different numbers. Starting at the top of the page, the retirement income, which is the most conservative fixed income heavy portfolio, was up 5.5% year to date. When you look at the longer dated funds, like the 2065 fund, year to date, that's up 12.3. There's a lot more equity in that portfolio. I think 90% equity on that bottom fund relative to 30% equity in that top fund. So equity markets perform better than fixed income markets. The absolute performance of those longer dated funds is significantly better over the year-to-date period. That should come as no surprise. On page 18, we look at Tier 2 and Tier 3. And again, Tier 2 are passive index funds, giving participants a chance to piece together a bit of a portfolio. And then Tier 3 is sort of the same thing. Participants have the option of piecing together a portfolio based off actively managed options rather than passive. So Tier 2, those funds should look a lot like the benchmark. They do across the board. That's what they're designed to do. And in Tier 3, these funds are trying to outperform their benchmark. Year to date, the Windsor 2 fund, which is U.S. large cap, has outperformed this benchmark significantly. The U.S. growth fund managed by Vanguard's got some of that tech exposure that we talked about. So why you see 30% return year to date, outperforming its benchmark. And your other actively managed equity fund on the international side, 13.5%, outperforming its benchmark net of fees. So I don't know. This is probably as good of a story, I think, as we've seen in some time, where you have strong absolute performance and you have managers that are more or less across the board outperforming their benchmarks. It's a pretty good story. I'm going to go to the next page. Yeah, I guess this is it on page 18. Those last two funds, not the most exciting funds out there, right? These are more capital preservation vehicles, a money market and a stable value fund. And again, these funds are designed for participants that we don't want to lose money, right? We just want capital preservation. That's what those options are designed to offer up. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're not losing money, but the returns aren't going to be as robust. And again, they're just not designed to do that. Those are your safest options within your DC plans. We're going to cover two more pages. One is page 19. This is looking at fees. So the fees for your pension plan investments. We're looking at the fund name on the left, the market value and assets. And then in the middle of that page, you can see what the fee is in percentage terms and what that equates to in dollars. And then we have a universe of institutional peers. So funds that are really playing in the same sandbox as each of these funds. You can see what that median fee is. And more or less across the board, your fees are in line or fairly better. There's a couple of funds that have a slightly higher fee. Morgan Stanley, those are the two that stand out. But again, these are still reasonable. And, especially in the DC space, that's the key word. You want to make sure that fees are reasonable for what you're getting. Your pension fees are reasonable across the board. You can see your aggregate pension fee is 45 basis points, which is pretty fair for a broadly diversified plan. And then the DC side, your fees are even lower. I think this is partially by design. Vanguard is one of those providers that offer low-cost fee options. And again, this is where you want to be especially careful with making sure that fees are reasonable. It's pretty easy to get swept up into a lawsuit if fees are deemed unreasonable, whether it be by participants or different law firms, et cetera. But here we can look at this and say, boy, your fees are below the universe median. They're low in absolute terms, and in our opinion, they're certainly reasonable. But again, we just want to put this in front of you every quarter. It's a good fiduciary exercise. So no concerns there. I think, generally speaking, good news across the board, whether you're looking at fees, whether you're looking at what markets have provided and how that's impacted both your pension plan and your DC plans. I think generally good news. Tim, I'll stop there. I don't know if there's any questions, but that wraps up the pages I wanted to hit in my prepared remarks.
All right, no, good presentation. I think you hit the important points. Are there any questions for Mike before we let him go? Mike, looks like everybody's satisfied. Thank you very much.
That's good, Tim. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks, everybody.
All right, moving forward, the next...
is now exiting.
Sorry, the rest of the items are all mine. I'm going to start with the next two loan updates. I'm going to do those together. So you should have a presentation called WIFIA Loan 2023D and SRF Loan 2023E in your packets. And this is the initial funding for the fluidized bed incinerator project. So I'm going to go through that now. If you can go to the next page. Just talk a little bit about the sources here. So normally when we fund projects, we are looking at capital markets, which is going out to big bond investors. Although we've had a lot of accessing the state revolving fund loan market, which provides subsidized rates. And then WIFIA is a relatively new federal program. It's been around for a few years. And I'm going to talk a little bit about a WIFIA loan here that we also have been accepted to apply for. Both of these are competitive projects, so this money is not always available, and these funding sources fund specific projects. When we go to the capital markets, we get a big pool of money that we can use for any of our projects. These particular sources are competitive, and we submit a project that goes through an approval process at the source level. So with Missouri Department of Natural Resources, their SRF Clean Water Program, they adopted an intended use plan last November that's been amended a couple of times this year, but MSD actually had about $630 million of loans on that fundable list. I'm sorry, MSD had about half of the $630 million of fundable loans that MDNR put in that intended use plan, which is a large amount. We've already closed on about a $26 million and an $8.5 million loan. We just closed on those a few weeks ago. And so now we are getting ready to close on the $260 million, which is a large, maybe the largest loan that the state SRF program has ever put out this month with pending your approval. And then WIFIA, which is a wastewater infrastructure loan program from the federal government. This is a long process also. We submitted a letter of interest to be part of the program in July of 2021. We applied for $278 million. We were invited to apply a few months later. We were one of 40 projects across the nation that were accepted. And then we submitted our application right about a year ago. And so since then we've been, we started the bid process on the project. You know, we've talked about the project in here extensively, and then we've been negotiating loan terms. And so we are also ready to close on that one. We actually had a chance to upsize that. So we were going to be going to the board for $330 million under that program instead of the 278. And we'll get into the numbers part of that in just a few minutes. On the next slide, this just talks a little bit about the project, fluidized bed incinerators, which I think everybody's familiar with. The loans are going to be structured from a covenant standpoint and a terms standpoint outside of the financial terms, very similarly to all our other debt. They're really based on our master bond ordinance, so we have the same financial covenants. We have the same requirements which include things like adopting annual budgets, conducting annual audits, setting rates that cover operating expenses, and minimum debt service requirements. So all that stays the same. The biggest difference is since these are project-related loans, we have additional reporting requirements, and the WIFIA and the SRF even differ there. But we basically have to let the loan providers kind of know where the project is. We submit costs to them that get approved then for funding as we go on, and which is actually a source of one of the savings that we'll talk about in a minute. The state actually sets a mandatory sinking fund schedule, which is the amortization table. It's designed for level debt service. So think of it like a mortgage where we pay really the same amount combined of principal and interest every year, but it's more principal in the beginning. More interest in the beginning and less principal, and more principal and less interest at the end of the term. With you, we have a lot more flexibility to structure the payments, and we took advantage of that here to deliver savings in the initial part of that loan process so that we could keep rate increases lower. And so we're going to look at that in a minute as well. There is some flexibility with prepayments on both of these. The WIFIA is the most flexible. We can prepay that at any time. With the SRF, we do need written consent of the state, but we have a good relationship with the state, and the rates there are so low. We've not ever had an issue where we needed to prepay any SRF loans. All right, expected financial terms are on the next page. So I'm going to go through this. Loan amounts, as I said, $260 million for the SRF, $330 million is what we're targeting for WIFIA. So this is $590 million of the $900 million project that we're locking in here. The SRF loans are typically 20-year loans. We are asking the state for a 30-year loan. They, just a few years ago, approved loans to go up to 30 years, and they've agreed to give us a 30-year loan on this project. I believe it'll be the first 30-year loan ever from the state revolving fund. WIFIA loans are 35 years after substantial completion of projects. Substantial completion is roughly 5 years from now, so the term of this loan will span almost 40 years. The estimated rates, both of these deliver savings versus if we did a traditional capital markets loan. The SRF rate is right around 2%. Actually, it's still going to be a little bit under that if we closed today, so we're hoping to close this relatively soon. Another part of the savings is that this loan, we only pay interest on the amount we draw. If we go to capital markets, we get that big amount of cash all at once, and you start paying interest on all the borrowing amount. On SRF, since we submit costs as we incur them, we just draw a little bit at a time, and we only have to pay interest on that. So that's a significant savings in the first part of the loan, because it usually takes a year to two to draw down the loan fund. So that's a big savings. The 2% interest rate versus a capital markets rate, which is probably in the 4.35 range right now, is also a huge savings. The WIFIA loan also has a little bit lower rate than what we'd see in the capital markets. It also is structured so we only pay interest on the amount that is drawn. So there is significant savings there. There's some savings from the lower rate, although it's not as big of a difference between the SRF loan and capital markets, but there's still some savings there. And then there's some other flexible terms, which I'm going to talk about in a second, which also make the WIFIA a good choice for funding this project. Cost of it. I'm sorry, was that Trustee Wabi? Did you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick one. So on the WIFIA loan, so we don't actually take down the funds until, is it the 2044? That's the first. debt service payment. Is that correct?
Yes, yep, I'm going to get to that in just a second, but we've structured that to be interest only for a period of time, and that is to manage rate increases. And we'll look at what those dollars look like in just a second.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're okay. Cost of issuance, these are decently big dollars, but given the size of the loans, they're really not. They're lower than the cost we'd expect if we went out for capital market loans of the same size. And then principal and interest payments. So we expect the SRF principal payments to start in a few years, July of 2028, which is right near the end of substantial completion of this project. The WIFIA loan, as I said, we have this one structured to be interest only for a period of time. And that's so that because of the size of these loans, it helps us manage rate increases. So this is actually going to give us significant interest savings over the next 20 years versus if we'd started paying off principal earlier. We will pay more at the end of this loan than we would have if we did capital markets. But by that time, actually, all of our existing debt will have been paid off. And so it fits in nicely. And kind of, if you look at an overall layout of the way that our debt payments are structured, this kind of fits. The biggest cost of the WIFIA loan will come when existing costs are going to be gone. And so the current rate structure actually supports the debt structure that will look like years from now as well. I do expect that we'll add more debt over time, but since we are going to start seeing debt that's been issued in the past, remember all the debt that we've issued has been 20 or 30 years, and we started 20 years ago. So starting in the next couple of years and over the next 10 years, we're going to start to see that debt that we've issued previously all start to get paid off. It's been paid off, but it will actually be gone. So annual debt service on the SRF loan is going to be about 12 million a year. On the WIFIA, it'd be about 20 million. That is a significant savings over where capital markets would be, which we'll see on the next slide. Present value savings versus a traditional debt loan, 85 million on the SRF. That is a big number. That is the benefit of being able to use these federally funded programs that a tax-exempt entity like us can. So the SRF delivers the big savings. WIFIA, not as big, but a 5 million present value savings is still significant. And again, the way we have this structured for the significant savings in the near term, and the higher expenses in the future also kind of play into some of that savings as well. I will add also the WIFIA has significant flexibility in that until we draw on that loan, and we do not have to draw on that loan until other funding sources are exhausted, we have an opportunity one time to reset the rate. So if we lock in this rate today, if a year from now or 2 years from now we haven't drawn on this loan, if interest rates fall, and you heard Mike Comstock a little bit talk about their discussions about potential rate cuts next year, we can reset this rate just by sending a letter to the WIFIA program, which will obviously be another source of savings. The WIFIA loan also has a lot of flexibility with being paid down. So we are currently in talks with the state to fund the rest of this project with SRF funds, and you can see the significant savings SRF provides. So if we can get more SRF funds, we can cut back the size of this WIFIA loan and replace some of it. We can also in the future at any time, if rates fall even more, pay off the WIFIA loan. We don't have to wait for a call date like we do with the like we often do with the capital market bonds. So WIFIA gives us a lot of flexibility to adjust the funding costs if better opportunities arise. So I think the structure is very helpful now because it's going to save our ratepayers a significant amount of money over the next 10 and 20 years. But if the opportunity presents itself, we are able to lock in even more savings. One unique feature of the WIFIA, can only fund up to 49% of eligible project costs, and that's part of the federal statute that put it in place. So on the next page, we're going to look at the debt service schedules. So on the far left, we see a column for SRF and a column for WIFIA. These are divided up by rate cycle. I just summarized it like that so I could fit it on a page. And so in the middle column, the total, you see the total debt service cost, that's principal plus interest combined, that we are committing to for these two loans, versus the next column over is the capital markets. That's what it would look like if we went out for capital markets loans at this time, or at least matched up with the start lines of these these loans. And I did not assume any rate increase for the capital market loan that would line up with the WIFIA. And then the final column to the far right is the savings. So in this next rate cycle that we'll be entering into next year, these funding sources that I'm presenting to you and I'm asking for intro and adoption on next week will deliver about $67 million of savings versus a capital markets loan. That drops to roughly $40 million for the next handful of cycles. And most of that savings, because we're only in the beginning, is because we're only paying on what's drawn and not the full amount up front. And then that savings continues to go down. Then you can see at the end of the term, and we're talking that's not starting for 30 years. What I'm presenting now will actually cost more. But two things in our favor is that we have opportunities again to lower these costs as time goes on, as I mentioned, especially with the WIFIA. And then by the time, 30 years from now, all the debt we have today will be gone. And again, I think we'll add more debt, but we already have a rate structure that supports our current amount of debt. And so rates will not need to increase as quickly to absorb this level of debt. Plus, you're talking another 30 years of median household income increases. And so when we talk about affordability, we're looking at our rates versus median household income. That increases over time as well. Locking in these costs now means that it will not have as big of an impact on affordability at that time as well. Any questions about that? Trustee Wabi, did that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it did. Real quick, I just wanted to, so as our interest rates, as the environment begins to soften and interest rates begin to come down, one of the things we got to take, and we want to continue to reduce debt. One of the things that we'll probably be looking at is trying to refinance debt as rates are, out of higher interest rates to lower interest rates as they begin to decline. I want to caution us to pay attention to that and not to do that and not take those short-term pickups, because long-term we're looking at it, it's still, even with this really well-designed financing structure, we're still looking at a pretty substantial amount of debt. And so I just want to be cautious as when rates top off and begin to decline, that we don't immediately start moving towards, let's save some money and extend those, those loans. Let's get them paid off.
So I will say that we've been very aggressive with refinancing as rates fall, but we do not extend loan terms. So when I come to you with refinancing or previous boards, one of the features that we always present are savings based on existing structure. So if I present to you today a 30-year loan and 8 years from now the rates have fallen, there's an opportunity for savings. That savings is not based on, like a lot of people refinance their mortgage and they just do another 30-year loan. What we would do is we would issue essentially a 22-year loan 8 years from now at a lower rate, and we would only do that if it presented overall savings, not just an annual savings in the first year, but overall savings. So I think your point is good. We do not want to do like most people do with a mortgage, where you just keep extending the term of the debt, and that is not what MSD has done historically.
Good, thanks.
You're welcome. All right, next page, I just want to look at debt authorization really quickly. So we had $900 million of bond authorization approved by voters in 2016, another $500 million in 2021. We've actually not touched that $500 million. There's still about $93 million available under that. However, these two loans will use up the rest of that $90 million and then take out almost all that $500 million in one fell swoop. So we are planning to go back to the voters for new debt authorization in April. So the timing is fine and pretty much as planned. So I just wanted to let you kind of know where we are with the debt authorization. We do have the authorization to issue these loans. Once they're issued, then we will not have significant debt authorization until next April, assuming the public authorizes more through vote. All right, so next and last page, introduction and adoption of 2 ordinances is what will be on the board agenda next week. Authorizing the district to execute all the documents necessary to issue these loans. Again, that's up to $260 million in subordinate SRF loans and up to $330 million in subordinate WIFIA loans. We will be monitoring rates. If there is an opportunity to get more SRF, then we will look at how we restructure this, particularly the WIFIA, to achieve the best savings possible for the ratepayers. Any additional questions? All right, the next 2 slides are just the.
Here's a real quick.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. You said that the additional authorization, we don't have additional authorization of the 530 or 593 million.
Correct.
Right. But we anticipate that the voters give us the approval to borrow more money next April.
Well, historically they have. If they don't, and I think we may be talking about that next meeting, but when we go to the voters, we present them a case. This is what rates look like if you approve debt authorization. This is what rates will look like if you do not approve debt authorization. So either way, the project's going to get funded. We give the voters the choice of whether they want to pay for that with debt or just through rates.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Okay. Then the final slides, Stephanie, you can skip the next 2. Those are just the detail sheets, but they don't have anything new. This is the monthly operating portfolio summary that we look at. Starting in the upper left, $615.5 million of par. That's down $23 million from last month and down about $50 million from 3 months ago. So we've been going through cash. This is because of capital projects. This is not unexpected. This is why we were carrying cash, because we knew that we were going to get to this point where we had to outlay the cash. We have no more bond project funds other than some SRF that we're drawing on slowly. Our yield to maturity has been pretty stagnant. It was low, 2.6 as last month as well. The yield to maturity on the benchmark also stayed the same at 5%. We're still anchored a little bit by previous loans that were issued, a year and a half or more ago at lower rates. All of our new, investments, all of our new investments are kind of in the 5.3% range, but some of those are rolling off while we're adding new ones. And since overall portfolio is declining, we're just not making much progress here. We'll probably see a tick up in October and another one in May when some of the older loans fall off as we use the funds to make debt service payments. Weighted average maturity is roughly the same. So nothing more big in that sector. If I move over to the top right, sector allocation, these are mostly in line with last month. The U.S. bond treasury note, which we have an unlimited policy amount. Rates there have been pretty good since short-term interest rates are so high. So we were at 48% last month. We're at almost 51% this month. We saw the Fed agency actually went the other way then, went from 36 to 33, and the commercial paper is roughly the same in that 15.5% to 16% range. But the key there is that we are in compliance with all of our policy limits. No big summary changes in the fund summary at the bottom left. MSD operations is where you see that $23 million drawdown. And the maturity distribution just highlights the difference between the benchmark and our portfolio. The benchmark is really all 2 to 3 years. I know I say this every month, but that entire amount turns over, so that rate tends to change more quickly than ours because the entire portfolio moves at once, whereas we have, more than half of our investments are now mature in less than a year. We still have investments that go out 1 to 2 years and 2 to 3 years, and so it'll take a while for those to turn over. So we have a little bit of difference in the structure between our portfolio and the benchmark. But that is nothing different than what you've seen in the past. Any questions? All right, Colonel Wilson, I do not have any further business for this meeting.
Thank you, Tim. Our next meeting is scheduled for the 3rd of October. And if there's no comments, entertain a motion for adjournment.
Second?
Thank you. Hey. Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to the Stakeholder Relations Committee meeting, Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District. Can I get a roll call?
Yes, the record will reflect that trustees Wilson, Nikozison, and Watson are in the room, and trustees Fair and Wabi are present online.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the committee meeting minutes of 1st of August?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, with no objection, minutes are approved. Move on to the presentation by Bert on the compliance report.
Thank you, Trustee Wilson. Trustees, in front of you, you should have a semi-annual regulatory compliance report presentation, and that's what I'm going to be going through today. If you would turn to slide 2, please. We're going to go over a few things. We always hit plant compliance. These are the discharge permits that we need to abide by at our 7 treatment plants that are issued to us from the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. We're going to talk a little bit about how our emergency response has been, and then go over some collection system metrics and service level goals. If you'll turn to slide 3. This chart represents how we've been doing with regards to all of the samples that we collect on a daily, weekly, monthly basis at our treatment plants. My department operates the treatment plants. We collect all these samples, and then we send these samples to our laboratory that's part of Rich's group that operates on the Bissell Treatment Plant campus. You can see up on the top, we have a lot of compliance points every 6 months. The important column here is the one in darker blue under 2023. So for the first 6 months of the year, we've had perfect treatment plant compliance. And I can tell you through today's date, we've also had no violations. What's really nice is you look at the far right column, you can see, most treatment plants have had perfect compliance for multiple years in a row. Bissell treatment plant on the top is on pace to have a good year this year. The past, in 2022, that was the trickling filter project that was giving us some problems with our solids. That project has been completed, or the first phase of that project has been completed. There's a small follow-up project that I believe will be introduced next year to replace the media and 2 more trickling filters. But overall, very good year so far. And as you can see, 6 out of the 7 treatment plants have had very good compliance. You turn to page, and please stop me if you have any questions. I'll go through these. If you turn to page 4, our commitment to our ratepayers and our customers is to respond within 4 hours, less than 4 hours, when they call us and say, I've got a problem, I need you to come out and look at it. And year to date, our compliance, our on-time response has been at 94%. It's been very good for the year. And you can see going back, many years there, it's I think it's slowly ticked up, but we've had a good year so far. If you turn to slide 5, this is our water backups. So when you hear about someone calling us and they've had a water backup in their basement, we track those. Our goal is based on the number of customer accounts that we have, but our goal is 220 semi-annually, or 210 semi-annually, and we had 129 for the first 6 months of this year. So very good with regards to that. If you turn to page 6, we also track our maintenance-related overflows. This is when it's not raining. So think of this, if a customer calls up or someone identifies a manhole overflowing or something like that, we would respond to it, and we track these, and we base this metric on the miles of pipe that we have within our system. And we use these metrics. These are comparable with other sewer districts, so we can compare our performance to them to make sure that we're performing at the right level. But we only had 64 of those. Our goal is to be less than 80 every 6 months.
Real quick, you said that's based on the mileage of pipe. What is the maintenance-related building backup base? What's the kind of the baseline down?
The baseline there is 1 backup per 1,000 homes. So we have approximately 425,000 customers. So, you do the math there and it comes out that we should have less than 210 every 6 months. The maintenance-related overflows, the metric, and there's a little more detail on the last page there, but the standard is to be below 2.5 overflows per 100 miles of pipe. And we have approximately 6,500 miles of sewer pipe. That's both our separate and combined systems. And so when you do the math, that's how we come up with our goals there. Thank you. Good question. If you turn to page 7, we also track the number of overcharged mains that take place due to rain events. If you look at the far right side of the page, we had 597 for the first 6 months. That was basically made up of 2 events that happened, one on Mother's Day and one on Father's Day. The Mother's Day event was 3 to 4 inches of rain, mainly in south of downtown St. Louis. There was just a blob of rain that decided it wanted to hang out there and dump a whole bunch of rain on our customers down there. 440 approximately of the overcharged mains were from that event, and another 70 were from the Father's Day rain that decided to fall, roughly in the same area. Instead of 3 to 4 inches, it was 2 to 3 inches in a very short period of time down in that area. Much better than the 5,883 that took place in the last 6 months of 2022. If you turn to page 8, we track all of our sanitary sewer overflow points. That is what Rich's capital program is highly focused on, to eliminate all of those. As you can see, over time, we've been whittling that down. Back in the day, there used to be hundreds and hundreds of these. We're currently down to approximately 30. These are going to be the tougher ones to get out. They're going to take a little more time because they're bigger projects or projects that require multiple stages to get to that SSO to remove it. But the good news is, out of those 30 overflow points that are still in the system, if you turn to page 9, we track the activations of those. So we know when an SSO is, wastewater is coming out of an SSO. We have instrumentation on it. It relays that, through the phone system, cellular networks, and tells us when they activate it. And we only had 7 of those activations in the first 6 months of 2023. And then finally, on slide 10, happy everything's green there on the right-hand column. In summary, our plant compliance has been perfect so far, and, knock on wood, hopefully we'll get to the end of the year that way. Our customer response has been very good. And then our service-related metrics with regards to backups and overflows have also met and been below what our targets are. And with that, if there's any questions, if not, Trustee Wilson, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. President, you want to discuss with us a little bit of the status of the rate proposal?
Sure. Rate proposal was due September 5th from the Rate Commission, and they have delivered that. We have hard copies for all the trustees. Those who are here today, we'll give you those. Those who are not here, we'll have them delivered or whatever method they'd like. Also, if you wish, an electronic version is available for either delivery, or if you want an electronic version of everything, let Wendy know, and Wendy can go ahead and forward you that. After the meeting today, also the documents that came from the Rate Commission will be posted on our website. Those consist of a letter transmitting the proposal, a resolution from the Rate Commission, as well as the large Rate Commission recommendation report. Excuse me. The other thing that will happen as part of the submittal is at the board meeting a week from Thursday, the chairman of the Rate Commission, Len Tenges, we'll give him some time early on in the meeting to just speak and kind of communicate what they're relaying to the Board of Trustees from the Rate Commission report. Moving forward, formal public discussion on the Rate Commission report can start in October. There's two major activities that the board needs to accomplish. One is consideration of adoption of a resolution regarding the wastewater rates, stormwater rates, and tax rates, or any change in the structure of those rates, and they have all changed. With regard to the 5 factors that the Rate Commission considered regarding the rates, they have agreed that the rate proposal met that burden. So that's one activity that the board needs to take. The second, and you'll find this in the documents especially, and it's outlined in the letter that you'll receive from the Rate Commission, they do have other recommendations in the report that traditionally the district and the board have gotten together and said, what can we do, what can't we do, what's a good compromise, to let them know how we're moving forward. So we'll have a lot of discussion on that. 2 or 3 of those items are affordability or funding ideas. The biggest portion of the discussion is how to actually operate the municipal fund, the municipal grant programs out of the stormwater part of the proposal. You'll find I've gone through their documents. You can look through the documents, but the Rate Commission in their letter has done a real good job of pointing out the issues that they think are important and where they're at in the 150, 200 page rate proposal document. So we'll start that in October. In general, we need to have all this resolved by November in order to give you time to decide and agree on what's a good date to go to the polls. And so therefore, usually we would introduce in November and adopt that in December if we can. So we'll have a 2-month period to do that. I would offer, we're going to send out the information prior to the October meeting. If any of you have any questions of staff, please call us. We'll provide whatever explanation we can or have any discussion you wish. Obviously, we can't have the board getting together prior to the October meeting, but if there's something you see in the document you got a question about, please feel free to contact us. Mr. Chairman, that is the extent of my report.
Thank you. Our next meeting date is Tuesday, October the 3rd, 2023. If anyone have anything for the good of the body? If not, in the pleasure of my life, and I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you.